I adjusted the sleeve of my sleek navy sheath dress, a vintage Dior that looked understated enough for them to assume it came from a discount rack, as I approached the sprawling Montrose estate for our monthly family dinner. The 1920s Tudor-style mansion gleamed under the soft glow of the Houston skyline, its ivy-wrapped walls hiding a truth none of them could imagine. "Oh, look who finally made it," my stepsister Harper's voice carried across the marble foyer, thick with disdain. "Did you use the staff entrance like last time?" I almost laughed. If only they knew the property deed had been sitting in my private safe for 2 years. Montrose Manor wasn't theirs anymore, it was mine. "Sorry, slipped my mind," I murmured, playing the role I'd perfected since Dad's passing 7 years ago, the overlooked stepdaughter who managed a few rental units. They had no clue that my company, Sterling Urban Holdings, oversaw $4,600,000,000 0 cents in luxury assets, including this mansion, their favorite restaurants, and half the office towers Harper bragged about frequenting. "We'll try to remember," my stepmother Eveline said coolly, flashing a diamond choker clearly fresh from Cartier. I noticed, but didn't comment. She didn't know that every purchase she flaunted was paid for in rent. To me. Dinner unfolded as usual. My stepbrother Chase boasted about acquiring a prime property in the energy corridor, 3 office complexes I'd quietly bought last year through a shell firm. Harper showed off her new penthouse with sweeping city views, oblivious that I owned the entire building. "Savannah, darling," Evelyn purred, her tone dripping superiority. "Be a sweetheart and help the staff serve dinner." I glanced at Rosa, the head housekeeper. She met my eyes and gave the faintest smile. She knew exactly who signed her paychecks, and the paychecks of everyone in this room, indirectly. "Of course, Evelyn," I said smoothly, stepping toward the kitchen. My phone buzzed. "Eviction notice is ready. Just say the word." "Perfect." As I returned, Chase was mid-sentence. "There's this new development, the Lexington Tower. I'm planning to buy in." I took my seat, biting back a laugh. Lexington Tower? Acquired last month. By me. And his lease? Up for renewal next week. "Ambitious," Eleanor said slowly, her tone dripping with doubt about her son's so-called business ventures. "But real estate at that level requires connections. Connections that some of us actually have," Harper added with a smirk aimed squarely at me. "Unlike others who just manage rentals. If they only knew my rentals included half the luxury properties in downtown Chicago, that their glossy lifestyles rested on leases I controlled." "Speaking of properties," Chase chimed in, swirling his wine, "did you hear about Montrose Manor? Apparently it was sold 2 years ago to some mystery investor. Dad's old friend mentioned it at the club." Eleanor waved a manicured hand. "Nonsense. We'd know if our home had been sold. We have an ironclad lease." "Actually," I said quietly, unable to resist, "the property did change hands. The records are public." "And how would you know?" Harper sneered. "Been filing papers at the county office?" "I read about it," I replied softly, watching their faces pale. "Real estate is my job." "Managing a few rentals isn't real estate," Chase scoffed. "Leave the serious talk to the adults." I thought about the file waiting in my office. 3 years' worth of documented lease violations, complaints from neighbors, and unauthorized renovations. Everything I needed to evict them legally from my property. "More wine, Savannah," Eleanor commanded sharply. "And do try not to spill. These linens cost more than you make in a month." The linens were mine. So was the table, the chandelier, and the Tudor mansion they thought was theirs. Bought quietly through one of my holding companies after Dad's death, right after they forced me out of my childhood home. My phone buzzed, a message from my assistant. "Law firm confirms. All papers signed. Ready when you are." Perfect. I glanced around the room, taking in every antique piece Eleanor claimed as her own. She had no idea I'd spent the last 3 years building Sterling Urban Holdings, worth billions. Harper's voice sliced through my thoughts. "Savannah, are you deaf? Mother asked for wine." I smiled, reaching for the bottle. "Of course," I said sweetly. "Wouldn't want to forget my place." "As if you could," Harper laughed, her voice slicing through the warm glow of the dining room chandelier. You're basically our maid anyway. Might as well make it official. The words hung in the air as I poured the Merlot, steady and deliberate. Every drop carried me closer to the moment I'd been planning for 3 years. Soon, they'd know who truly owned Montrose Manor. Soon they'd learn what real power looked like, and it looked nothing like their gaudy designer labels or hollow bragging rights. "Oh, and Savannah," Eleanor called as I set the bottle down. "While you're being so helpful, we need to discuss your presence at the Winterhurst Gala next week." I froze briefly, already knowing where this was going. The Winterhurst Club, one of the most exclusive social circles in Chicago, another jewel in my portfolio. "We don't think it's appropriate for you to attend," Harper said coolly, inspecting her manicure. "It's for members only, and, well, you're not exactly Winterhurst material." I bit back a laugh, thinking of last month's membership committee meeting, the one I had chaired as the club's owner. Every membership renewal required my signature, including theirs. "I understand," I murmured, glancing at my phone as a notification popped up. "Attorney, eviction notices finalized. Green light when ready." Perfect timing. "Actually," Chase drawled, leaning back with smug confidence, "I've got a private meeting next week with Winterhurst's owner. Some development opportunities. Very hush-hush." Oh, he wasn't. The only meeting scheduled with the club's owner was happening now, at this table. "Speaking of developments," Eleanor interjected, swirling her wine, "we're planning renovations for the house. Just minor things. Knocking down a few walls, adding a conservatory." I studied her, calm and silent, as she detailed plans that violated every zoning regulation and their ironclad lease. "That sounds ambitious," I said softly. "Did you check with the owner?" Harper barked out a sharp laugh. "As if we need permission to improve our own home. That mystery investor probably hasn't even seen the place." The doorbell chimed, echoing through the grand hallway. "Right on schedule." "Savannah, get that," Eleanor commanded. "The staff is busy." I stood slowly, smoothing the fabric of my Dior dress, and headed for the door. My heart thrummed. Not with nerves, but anticipation. I reached for the door handle, a slow smile curling at my lips. The moment I'd been waiting for was finally here. And trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. Hit subscribe so you're there when the truth drops. "Of course," I murmured, voice smooth as silk. "Wouldn't want to upset the natural order." As I walked toward the door, their laughter floated behind me, sharp and smug, each word a reminder of the role they thought I'd never escape. If they only knew who was about to serve them. I opened the door to find Thomas, my attorney, standing there with a thick envelope in hand. He met my gaze, a subtle grin tugging at his lips, and then raised his voice just enough for the dining room to hear. "Delivery for the residents of Montrose Manor." "What is it?" Eleanor called from the table, irritation lacing her words. I stepped back into the dining room, the envelope in plain view. Appears to be legal documents. "We'll open it," Chase snapped, his arrogance filling every corner of the room. "Probably something about those renovations." I slid the papers free, my fingers steady despite the rush of adrenaline. 3 years of planning had led to this moment. "It's an eviction notice," I said softly, savoring the silence that followed. "Effective immediately, all residents must vacate within 30 days due to repeated lease violations." The color drained from Eleanor's face. "That's impossible. There must be a mistake." "No mistake," I replied, spreading the documents across the table. "The owner is exercising their rights. Every violation is documented. Unauthorized renovations, noise complaints, misuse of property." "Who is this owner?" Harper demanded, snatching at the papers. "Some faceless corporation can't just—" "Actually," I cut her off, straightening to my full height, the submissive mask sliding away. "Sterling Urban Holdings can, and so can I." Chase laughed, but his eyes betrayed him. "What are you talking about?" I pulled out my phone, the deed glowing on the screen. "I bought Montrose Manor 3 years ago, right after you forced me out, along with half the properties you love to brag about." Eleanor's lips parted soundlessly. You're lying. You're just a property manager." "No," I said, my voice crisp. I'm the CEO of Sterling Urban Holdings, your landlord, your club owner, and the woman who's watched every arrogant move you've made. The room erupted, voices rising, chairs scraping, but I only smiled. You can't do this, Eleanor whispered, eyes wide. We're family. I met her gaze, steady and cold. Family doesn't treat you like a servant in your own home. Emily, I said softly, circling the table, my heels clicking against the marble floor. Let's talk about family, Eleanor. Let's talk about how you treated your late husband's daughter. This is absurd, Chase barked, shoving back his chair. You expect us to believe that you, the help, own Sterling Urban Holdings? I smiled and tapped my phone. The dining room lights dimmed as the hidden smart system projected the company profile across the far wall. Current portfolio, 162 premium properties. Total valuation, $4,600,000,000, 0 cents. And yes, I added smoothly, that includes Lexington Tower, the building you were so desperate to acquire, Chase. Harper's hands trembled, her glass clinking against the crystal stem. But my penthouse, owned by one of my subsidiaries, I said calmly. And your lease? Up for review next month. Those rooftop parties you've been bragging about? Violations, every single one. Eleanor finally spoke, her voice brittle. Your father left you nothing. We made sure of that. No, I corrected, my tone icy. You thought you made sure of that. But Dad was smarter than you gave him credit for. That little property management firm you mocked? It was his silent investment, the seed money that helped me build Sterling Urban Holdings. I let my fingers trace the carved mahogany of the dining table, the same table they claimed as an heirloom. Everything in this house, every piece of furniture, every painting, every family treasure, legally belongs to me, has for 3 years. Why? Harper's voice cracked. Why wait so long? I paused behind my father's old chair, meeting their eyes one by one, because I wanted the world to see you for who you really are. Every insult, every time you treated me like a servant, documented, perfect evidence for when you try to fight the eviction. Chase pulled out his phone. I'm calling our lawyer. Charles Montgomery? I laughed, low and sharp. He works for me now. Sterling acquired his firm last month. But please, call him. I'm sure he'd love to explain just how ironclad your eviction is. Eleanor stood, her composure splintering. What do you want? Money? Power? Name your price. I leaned in, voice soft but lethal. I want you to feel what I felt, being nothing in your own home while someone else smiled and claimed it all. My phone buzzed. Security team in position. Ready when you are. Ready to escort residents out when needed, the message on my phone read. I slipped it back into my pocket, my voice calm as ice. You have 30 days to vacate, I continued, each syllable deliberate. Though, given your documented lease violations, I could legally remove you tonight. Harper's shriek pierced the room. But where would we go? Perhaps the Winterhurst Club? I suggested lightly. Oh wait, your memberships were revoked this morning. Something about unpaid dues and inappropriate behavior toward staff. Chase slumped in his chair, color draining from his face. The Lexington Tower. My office. We'll need new tenants next week, I said smoothly. Sterling Holdings has standards for its commercial tenants. Eleanor made one final attempt, her voice trembling. Savannah, please, we can work something out. We're still family. Family? I echoed, the word tasting bitter on my tongue. Like when you made me use the service entrance? When you told the staff I was just another maid? When you erased every trace of my father from this house? I pressed a button on my phone. The lights dimmed, leaving a single spotlight glowing over my father's portrait. The one they'd hidden in the attic. I'd rehung it this morning, waiting for this moment. Dad knew who you were, I said, my voice firm. That's why he left me the seeds to build this empire. He knew I'd need to take back everything you stole, not just the house, but our family's legacy. The next hour blurred into tears, threats, and desperate bargains. They offered money they didn't have, connections they couldn't keep, anything to hold on to a crumbling illusion. Your personal belongings will be cataloged and stored, I informed them. Everything else, the furniture, artwork, jewelry you claimed as family heirlooms, stays with the house, its rightful owner. You'll regret this, Chase spat, voice shaky. No, I said, rising from my chair, smoothing the fabric of my Dior dress. I've enjoyed every second of this. Every time you dismissed me, every time you broke a rule thinking no one noticed, it all led here. I paused at the doorway. 30 days isn't long to dismantle a life built on lies. They stumbled toward the hall, stunned, and broke in. Oh, and Eleanor? I called after them, voice sweet as poison. Use the service entrance on your way out. Wouldn't want the neighbors to see you leave in disgrace. The gaudy renovations they had slapped onto Montrose Manor were the first to go. Glass walls, tacky chandeliers, cheap imitations of grandeur, gone. My father's curated art collection now hung proudly in its rightful places, his leather-bound books lining the shelves of the study he once cherished. My study now. I watched through security feeds as they packed their designer labels into battered cardboard boxes. Luxury looked different when it was stripped of context, especially when the house behind you was never yours. A year later, I sat in that same study, reviewing Sterling Urban Holdings' latest portfolio report, $4,600,000,000, 0 cents in assets. Each acquisition a lesson in patience and precision, every property a quiet strike in a war they never saw coming. Eleanor and her children had retreated to a cramped suburban apartment, the only place they could afford without their fabricated connections. Chase's real estate empire had shrunk to a desk in a second-rate agency. Harper's influencer feed had gone silent. Without my buildings as her stage, her followers evaporated like smoke. Maria entered with an envelope, another letter from Eleanor, pleading for reconciliation, for just one more chance. I slid it into a folder labeled Consequences, without breaking stride in my work. The house felt different now, lighter, cleansed of their poison. My father's portrait looked down from its rightful place, his eyes steady, as if saying, I knew you could do this. That evening, I walked the polished halls of Montrose Manor, my home now in every sense. I thought about power and its disguises. They wore theirs on their sleeves. Flashy cars, glittering clubs, performative wealth. But real power doesn't announce itself. Real power is quiet. It waits. It builds. I paused by the service entrance, the one they forced me to use for years, and let a slow smile spread across my face. Because sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't in evicting your enemies from their home. It's letting them discover it was never theirs to begin with. And the most satisfying victory? It isn't the reveal. It's remembering every insult that made this moment necessary. Montrose Manor stands as proof of one truth. Sometimes the help isn't just helping. Sometimes she owns every inch of the ground beneath your feet. The only question is, how long will she let you stand there before showing you the door? Preferably, the service entrance. You've seen how I reclaimed what was mine, not through rage but through patience and strategy. Now I want to hear from you. What would you have done in my place? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'll be reading every one. And if you believe in quiet strength and smart revenge, hit that subscribe button so you never miss the next chapter. Here's my advice. Never let others define your worth. Power isn't loud, it's silent, deliberate, and built one smart decision at a time. Remember, success is the best response to disrespect. Build quietly, strike when ready.